Hello, St. John's. I want to share with you a story about my spiritual director, Martha Shepherd, who passed away 8 years ago in mid-October. And I think of Martha Shepherd every year at this time, not just because it's the anniversary of her death, but also and most importantly because of the story I want to share with you today. Martha had a deep sense of prayer, and she taught me perhaps more about prayer than any other person. So in the story, I was driving along the 417. It was about 12 years ago, a very nondescript patch of highway, and the peak brightness of the leaves had just passed, and more leaves were on the pavement than were on the trees. And the days were getting shorter, and the darkness was setting in, and it was cold and it was damp, very much like it's been this week at times. And as I was driving, a very large flock of geese flew over the car heading south for the winter, and a deep sense of dread and emptiness and sadness entered me. And that was not unusual for me at that time of year because I've often suffered from seasonally affected disorder and just the dread of the cold days and the shorter days. And this sadness remained with me for a couple of days. But then I stumbled across an article that Martha Shepherd wrote about the same time and about the same thing. She wrote about watching the geese fly south for the winter, only her take was full of hope, and she saw the geese flying south not as an indication that everything was going dormant, but more as a call to prayer. And she wrote, whether you see the geese as calling us to prayer or whether you think of them as praying for us, they definitely point us in the right direction. And in the article, she goes on to talk about how she and her housemate were on the banks of the river, of the Ottawa River one evening, watching the geese and listening to them and praying, when two Muslim couples joined them on the side of the river and also entered into their own evening prayers. And then a Jewish family joined on the bank of the river, and the father led his family in prayer. And she wrote, there we were, representatives of the three monotheistic religions, all answering a call to look homeward, home to the Father, just as the geese were answering their instinctual call to fly forth, onward, outward. And she went on to write, St. Augustine said it centuries ago, and the geese say it each time they fly. To seek God is the greatest adventure. And so, ever since I read her article and had the pleasure of discussing it with her, when I watch a flock of geese fly south for the winter, a smile comes across my face. And I know that just as surely as they fly south every winter, they will return in the spring. And just as much as I know that this time of dormancy that we're in with the pandemic will be lifted.
So today for our video, I'm joined by our former choral scholar, now star soprano, Hayley Swanton, who's joining us from England. Hayley, tell us about your life. What are you up to?
Hello! Well, I live in this little place called Northernton in Manchester. And my life these days, like everyone, we're in lockdown. Manchester is a hot spot for COVID. But these days, I live with my partner, who is a professional pianist, and his son, his 5-year-old son. So these days, we get to make lots of music at home. We both work for the Royal Northern College of Music, which some of you may know, that's where I went and studied my master's. And recently, I've been trying to diversify in lockdown because the performing scene, as it is everywhere, has definitely had its challenges with COVID-19. And with fewer opportunities, I've been looking at broadcasting and looking into that. So at the moment, I actually have my own radio show on classical music. It's called Classical Escapades on my local radio station.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. You
Yeah.
landed on your feet. Well, I have such happy memories of you being here at St. John's and the many pieces. You and I were discussing in email some of the pieces that still when there's a soprano solo, like I hear your voice, I look around for you. Oh, wait, it's somebody else. But no, that was really cool. I remember you sang Mozart Requiem for me.
Yeah, so Mozart, actually, St. John's has been just such a huge part of my life, my musical life, my spiritual life, my personal life. And I've carried that with me throughout England, to the point where in my choir folder, which I still have, sorry, I may have taken it from the collection. I also have 2 pieces of music, which I also have taken from your collection. One is a copy of the St. John's Rite, and the other one is a copy of Do Not Be Afraid. And every single time I have a concert, those 2 pieces of music stay in my choir folder to remind me not to be afraid. The first thing that I always think about before I sing anything are your very wise words, Gordon, which is something will happen. I find myself repeating that a lot. And so I really take St. John's with me almost every single time that I go to perform, and especially when I have my music folder.
Well, that's amazing. That's fantastic. Hayley, you're going to sing for us today Schubert, Du bist die Ruhe. Can you tell us what it's about?
So this song is all about peace, and it's almost it's like a love song, talking about you are my peace, you are my joy, and talking about finding that peace in your eyes, and really seeing that person's soul. So it has a very loving romance to it, but at the same time there's also this level and depthness of spirituality as well. And it's just one of these pieces that you just have to allow to sink into you, and take that moment to listen and let the music speak to you and speak to your soul. It's more quiet, contemplative, and maybe not so in your face, so to speak, but really it's about introspection, I think.
This sounds like just the perfect piece for us to hear during COVID. Thank you, Hayley. Thank you for singing for us today.
My pleasure. We're just so excited that we can bring this to St. John's. As you're aware, St. John's is just a huge part of me. And the fact now that I can bridge my 2 lives of England and St. John's together, and that in many ways COVID has allowed us to do that, is just a blessing to me. So thank you.